Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 5 of Being Vulnerable. I didn't know I would be able to get to this point, but people love the show, so I'm going to keep bringing it to you. I have a very special guest today. This is
I'm Damon. You can call me
Damon.
Ultimate Rick Jones. I make music under the name Ultimate Rick Jones. But yeah, my name's Damon, and I kind of go by that, or at Dr. Hoover 72 on Threads for some of you. That's where Chris and I met, and I made a lot of friends on
I I feel so embarrassed because I literally just asked you that, but I wanted to call you Dr. Ultimate Rick
Dr.
Jones.
Ultimate Rick Jones. I would also answer to that, Chris, just for the record. No, I'm real bad at it too. Whenever anybody tells me their name, like I'm so anxious about remembering it, the chance that I'll remember it is like zero. And yeah, so no worries.
Well, I know you're Dave. I choked, but I mean it's also showing a bit of my own little social anxiety aspect too.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
cool. That's
Can you
cool.
can you introduce Dr. Hoover, Ultimate Rick Jones, Damon to the world?
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, I'm a Midwestern guy, I guess, is something I identify as. Damon's been making music. I guess I started writing songs a long time ago when I was in my teens, kind of started plunking some things out on the guitar and learning a little bit. And I've always been interested in art, like even before I made songs, I was always drawing and painting. I was a big comic book nerd, so I loved all that stuff and like really into all that. I'm a little older, so I was sort of growing up in the '80s, which was a great time for comic books, by the way. But yeah, I got really interested in art and like studio art, and I studied kind of painting and got interested in poetry and studied that, and got into the world and found there aren't many jobs doing painting and poetry, so I did some other stuff.
Yeah.
And so yeah, and so I kept kind of being interested in music, and here over the last year, like I found this great community of indie music folks on Threads, like you and other folks. Just met just a whiz bang group of folks there that kind of inspired me to start putting out some of these tunes. So here in the last year or so, we founded Ultimate Rick Jones, which is kind of my music name, I guess. It sounds like the name that only like a real egomaniac would self-apply. So like, that's who I want to push my music. So yeah, and I started kind of recording these songs, and some of them are tunes that I've written, have been written a long time that have kind of been, sitting with me for a while. And here lately, a couple of them have been kind of more recent ones that just kind of sprung out. So I've been at it for about a year doing that and having a real good time and meeting a lot of folks and excited to do some more. So yeah, man, I that's art wise, that's kind of it. I mean, I guess one thing that's kind of a little different about me from some of the other folks I know on Threads is I have a day job that I've had for a really long time, and so that's sort of different. Like I don't try to make any money on my music. I sort of funnel what money I can steal from my day job into my music to do it. So, but it's sort of really a passion project for me, and yeah, it's just an interesting kind of. It's sort of separate from what I feel like, what I get up in the
Yeah.
morning and do to make a little money. But yeah, does that give you kind of
Oh,
a pretty good sense, Chris, of kind of where I'm coming from?
it gives the world a sense, and it explains a
Cool.
lot, especially
Yeah,
explains your your passion for art because it's separate from your day job if I
it
am
is. Yeah,
assuming that.
yeah, yeah. No,
Um
that's right. Yeah, I do. Computer type stuff. I've done training in the past. Some things that are oddly social for how socially awkward I feel. But yeah, very different. Kind of has nothing to do really with sort of the creative part, I guess. So I really have always kind of felt like I kept the creative part separate once I sort of joined the working world.
the other thing I wanted to say is so is this the only like I listened to like a good 8 singles of yours on
Yeah,
YouTube. Is that all the only the music you released?
those are, yeah, so far I think there's eight total. If you heard eight, I think it's everything I've like fully released. I had some stuff out on SoundCloud that were just some kind of, acoustic
Yeah.
demo sort of recordings that I did. And I think I took those down as they became kind of real fully produced tunes. But yeah, I've got eight out there now. I think you can hear them all on Bandcamp and most of them on Apple or Spotify or YouTube.
Yeah.
And I got, yeah, a couple more coming, trying to figure out when to release some more, the holiday season is upon
So
us.
I
Do
I
I wait or do I release them now? Yeah.
I listened to every single track of yours that was on
Thanks, man.
those, just for preparation of this, and like
Yeah.
you are such a great songwriter. Just
Oh, thank you,
the
Chris.
the way that you do different patterns with your songwriting, like the because you do like to flex from instead of just A B A B.
Yeah.
I heard one song that you were like A B A C, and like
Yeah.
and it was like a peculiar bird. I think it
Yeah.
was that one.
Peculiar Bird. Yeah.
And I listened to that song like 4 or 5 times because I was like, this is such a great song. It reminded me of
Thank you.
some like um old school oh no, I just drew it.
That's all right. That's all right. You can come. It'll come to you when you least
Come back to
expect it
me.
later.
Come back to me.
That's right. You can interrupt whatever's happening to say, whoever.
I got it. I got
Yeah.
it.
Oh, but thank you, man. That's
Yeah.
a that and Peculiar Bird was kind of the first one that sort of prompted me to do this. My buddy said, like I have my buddy Chris, who's also the executive producer for Ultimate Rick Jones, that gives me guitar lessons and vocal. Like, he's been my teacher for like 8 years, and he's just like become a dear friend and like somebody that I really respect on the music side. And he said, "Why don't you do an album?" And I worked on the album for like a year, and nothing happened. And he's like, "Why don't you do this one song?" And that was Peculiar Bird. And I'm like, "Yeah, let's do that." And I finished it, and yeah, so it kind of was sort of the one that planted the seed. I'm like, hey, if I could do that with that, maybe I could, do some of these other ones that way too. And that kind of set me down the path. But so I'm really glad that you liked that one. It was kind of the
Yeah.
the prototype for the others.
I mean, I liked them all. So I think I was talking about Billy Joel.
Oh yeah. Oh hey man, I'll
Um,
take that all day long. Yeah, Billy Joel.
Peculiar
Huh?
Bird had a certain Billy Joel song that kind of like the harmony and the way that was mixed, it was like it, and then I started singing the Billy Joel song in my head.
You got
Um,
Betsy.
but at the end of the day, I started listening to more of your stuff, and like I was outstanded by your songwriting.
Well, thank you,
I
man.
Your songwriting is so um polished, and
Thank you.
your music is polished, like the way that it's being produced and like the mix and all that. But the songwriting for me as a poet,
Yeah,
like I really respected it, and I was able to get different interpretations from your songs,
good.
even though I could tell that you were talking like so specifically like everything's broken.
Yeah,
I could tell that was a love song, but it was a perfect song to communicate my love for the world and
yeah.
how like I am confused that why everything is being broken and
Right. Why does this world I love not love me back
yeah.
in the way that I feel, right? Why don't I feel that I get the same
Mm,
love back from this?
and you had the line like everything's always been broken, and I got that like actually gave me hope.
Yeah.
That
Right. I'm,
that
I'm
one
glad to hear
line.
that. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. I wondered how that line would land. I mean, that's sort of how it lands for me. Is not that it's hopeless or that it's always been hopeless, but like there's always been stuff to overcome, or there's always been, always been down times, always been tragedies or things you had to overcome. And it's just your turn is kind of what the song says in a way. It's like it's part of the life experience, right? You
Yeah.
you wind up here with 10 fingers and 10 toes on this planet, and you're going to get that.
And you definitely tell that story because it starts out with like, why is everything broken? How is everything broken?
Right.
Everything's
Was it
been
always?
broken.
Yeah.
And what do I do now that everything is broken? Like you had
Yeah.
those four different like chorus parts that
Right. Yeah. That one is kind of nice to when you can sort of step through time a little bit and like with the character sort of thought process. Yeah. But yeah, I'm glad that one resonates for you. I was a little concerned that maybe in the current climate it might be looked upon as a little overly optimistic. But I think the core of it, that idea that no matter what we do, it doesn't mean that we've done anything wrong. We have these challenges in our life. It's just life, right?
Yeah.
It's gonna be challenging. Yeah, and I was in a really dark place when I started kind of writing that. It was about kind of a dark turn after the pandemic and kind of losing some friends and loved ones. Was in kind of a
Yeah.
what the hell's going on life. And yeah, so that came from a real place of kind of uncertainty about what to do, and I kind of wrote my way into that. The
Uh,
place that the narrator comes out is not where I was when I started writing that. So in terms of songwriting being kind of therapeutic to take you
yeah.
from one place to another, that's one that helped me.
I mean, it's the power of music. It has the strength and the just like the opportunity to actually change someone's soul and heart of how they feel something. My
Yeah, I agree.
my life was changed by one song by Dave Grohl called Something from
Yeah.
Nothing.
Was that the
And
one that kind of started you on your musical journey?
it was the one that told me that I should still continue music.
Yeah.
Because I had picked up a guitar and tried playing and all this stuff, but when I started really believing in myself that I
Yeah.
could play, I started getting all this pushback and criticism.
Right.
And then Dave Grohl came out with the album called or no, a documentary called Back and Forth, where he like looked out into the screen and pointed at it was like pointing at the person watching,
Yeah.
and he was like, you could do whatever you want your mind to do
Yeah.
because you have the strength. So then I was like, maybe I can actually pick up guitar because all I've been
Right.
playing was rock band and stuff, and I've like
Yeah.
experted all these video games,
I can have the real strings now. I can try. Yeah.
and um, then he came out with the song "Something from Nothing" that said, "I became something from nothing, and you
Yeah.
can too."
Yeah.
And it like
Powerful.
both of those things together is the whole reason why I kept believing in myself and
Yeah.
pushed past that self-doubt and imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And then once I found out, like, oh, I can actually learn once I practice and put the time into it, that's why I rolled
Right.
back into college and went into music school. And
Yeah. Huh. That's great. Is that and is that when did you make a meaning for suffering? Which I love, by the way, and have a bunch of questions about. I would love to talk about. But yeah, it
love to.
was that around the time that like after that you started working on that, or was that later?
Meaning for Suffering was made so that was made my junior year of the university. When I went
Okay.
to when I first enrolled back in college, I went to a community
Yeah.
college,
Yeah.
did 2 years there, and got my recording arts degree.
Cool.
And then I wanted to be a singer-songwriter, so I auditioned for CU
Right. Yeah, I
Denver's.
remember. Yeah, I remember you talking a little bit
Yeah, so,
about that in one of the other ones. What did they? Was that where the guy told you sounded like Lou Reed?
no, the Lou Reed
That was
guy was
later.
no, that was before. That was at
Oh, before.
the community college because I knew this is what I want to do because I was a poet.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
didn't have a poetry degree at Front Range. But then I was told by people like him, who was a
Yeah.
professor and a mentor, that um, don't change who I am, continue my
Yeah.
style, and like you can become something because he also told me I was a philosopher because the music I was writing.
That's
So
great, man. I mean, yeah, that's cool that you found that person at that time. Like, I always feel like you can look back at your life and think, like, this person at that time said something or did something that was kind of a signpost, or, I'm just grateful for that person in that
yeah,
moment to have that key observation. It's very cool.
yeah, I mean he made it where I didn't try to be a pop artist or a pop singer and
Right.
stuff.
And try to change yourself. You're like, no, I want to do this thing, yeah, that I feel
And then he gave me
I
the
can.
courage to audition for CU Denver for their songwriter program, which
Cool.
one of the hardest programs to get into. But so
Yeah, I bet, man.
you've kind of heard this story before, but so there I ended up in film just because the I didn't get in the singer-songwriter department and I
Yeah, but
auditioned
you
for
could,
theater.
yeah. and got in and started working in theater.
Well, they cut the theater program the summer that I enrolled into it.
Yeah.
I ended up in film, but
Yeah.
what it showed me that all these things that I've learned through college and just my life, even through sports in my past, of like
Yeah.
all of these things were leading up to this moment. And it all led up to my junior year when I got my first junior thesis project. I did
Yeah.
Meaning for Suffering. Seems like you've been songwriting for a long time, and I did want to delve into your journey as a musician and how that
Yeah.
came about.
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. I guess when I was kind of a teenager, my dad had been a guitar player. And when he was a young man, when he was a teenager, and he had always kind of dreamed of becoming like a guitar player. He had a cousin who was very good. And he would like let my dad come and like sit in with the bands, and my dad could play rhythm guitar. Um,
Yeah,
and he just really loved it, and thought that it would be a thing that he would want to do when he became an adult. But he got married and had kids and had a bunch of responsibilities all of a sudden, and felt like he couldn't do that anymore for
yeah,
right or wrong. He felt like he had to kind of set that aside and earn a living, and so he went and did that. And I my dad had I'm from a big blended family. So my father was had married before and had four kids. My mother was married before and had four kids, and they came together, and I'm the only kid that they had. And all my siblings were like 10 years older than me. So I always felt like I had a real different experience growing up than my
crazy.
siblings, who were all older or kind of almost of a different generation in a way. Like they had been through things. Is that similar to you? Do you have something similar in your background, Chris? I saw you sort of
Yeah,
nodding. Yeah. And I mean, it's not that, we were a family and I love them, but it was different. Like I knew their lives had been different. So I guess I was always kind of interested in sort of creative stuff. We lost my mom when I was little. I was 9 when I lost her. And I think in some ways that made me a little more introspective and kind of interested in, I read a lot and I drew a lot and things that were kind of solo pursuits. And then when I got a little older, I just kept being interested in that stuff. I was really interested in visual art as a kid, and was interested in painting and studied painting. Was going to be an abstract painter for like 4 years, and I was going to be a poet for a little while. I was really into poetry, and I think that's around the time like I started asking my dad when I was a teenager. I'm like, Dad, we had these guitars that hung on the wall that nobody played, and we didn't have any strings. I'm like, did you know how to play that? And he's like, yeah, I used to play. So I got him to show me, like, to put strings on one of them and to teach me like very rudimentary, just like three chords. E, A, and B were like the only chords he knew. Um, but he taught me like how to play things initially. And I just really love the idea that you didn't have to know a whole lot on the guitar to write something too. So the
yeah.
first songs I wrote, like I don't even think I knew how to play them. I would take other people's songs and change the words. Did you ever do that as a kid? Like I took other people's songs and I would just sing different words that I wrote over them. Kind of my proto songwriting days, I guess. Um, but so I learned a little, and then I went off to college, and I met a fellow who had been taking guitar lessons since he was like 10, and he was really good. And he taught me some things. He was my roommate for a few years, and I learned some chords from him. And that was the first time that I started like stringing some things together and writing some songs. And we had like a little college band that could get together, like had nowhere to practice and couldn't play but like once a semester together. So we would kind of knock these songs out. And nothing ever really came of it. And I kept writing stuff just in my kitchen on my guitar, just acoustic stuff. And it's kind of what I've done since then. And there would be long fallow periods for like 5 or 6 years. I did nothing but paint, and I didn't write anything. And then I did some, and then I stopped that and kind of picked up music. And I've just kind of been focused on the tunes for the last decade or so. It got the bug. Um, and yeah, I really, at some point, I talked about my buddy Chris, who's like, hey, why don't you write an album? But, the other thing really is at some point I got to the point where I'm like, man, I love this song, like Peculiar Bird. I'm like, I like that song. I think it really needs a clarinet. how long would it take me to learn how to play the clarinet? Like this is really what I'm like, what would it take me to do these things? And I start set, or what would it take me to learn? Like I play rhythm guitar, okay, but I'm bad at lead. Like what would it take me to learn how to be like a good lead player? And I started to learn all these things, and I'm like, dude, you don't have the time to learn everything. And so my buddy Chris said to me, he's like, what do you enjoy and what do you want to focus on? Like, what's the part that you really like? And I'm like, I really like the writing. Like, I like the write. And I think I'm pretty good at, to your point, like my imposter syndrome, I feel like I've beaten it down pretty good there. It knows I can do this. Like, I feel I can do it. Like, it's still a little magical and it doesn't work every time and it's not 100%, but I know it can work if I work at it. And so I kind of decided, I think, in that moment to sort of focus on something and say, I can't do all these things. I just don't have enough time to learn how to play the clarinet and be a great guitar player and learn how to play the drums and do all this stuff. It's like, I'm going to do the part that I really love and I'm going to try to do it really well. And I'm going to do everything I can. And I'm going to get people to help me who are really good, right? Like I don't have to play the clarinet. There's somebody who already knows how to play the clarinet. And that it sounds kind of silly, but it was really kind of opened a door for me too, because now I'm super excited. I write these things and I give them to other people. I'm like, dude, what do you hear here? And the stuff I get back, it's amazing. I'm always surprised and pleasantly surprised. And yeah, I've kind of cast around and kind of worked with some different people, but I've had just a great um, you know, set of experiences working with other folks. And yeah, that's been like kind of my journey now is like I'm so excited about writing and kind of arranging these songs with other people and imagining what they can be. And it's just like it's such a night and day sort of place from what I was thinking and concerned about 5 or 6 years ago, which is I'm just going to write these songs and nobody's ever going to hear them. So yeah, now I'm in a really exciting place right now. I feel, where I'm really excited to work on these songs and to work with other people on them and see what they bring to them. And yeah, just kind of an exciting energy that I'm feeling about it right now.
Have you been getting a lot of people like interested in working with you?
Yeah, a couple, for the most part, I've reached out to people, the first I did a collaboration with Kelly Kintner of the Kintners. Kelly was one of the first people on Threads who kind of welcomed me into the community, and like he's since sort of moved on off of social media, but he was real welcoming, and he and I did a collaboration early on. He recorded a song I wrote called "Dio's Dead." Um,
Nice.
and yeah, and he did a great job. It was a fantastic experience. A lovely man and a lovely band. It's him and his wife Carrie, the Kintners, and they're wonderful musicians and great singers. But anyway, that was a real positive experience, and so it encouraged me to reach out to a couple other folks whose work I really like. And yeah, I haven't had many reaching out to me yet, but hey, man, it's early. Maybe if you see this and you want to work with Ultimate Rick Jones, man, holler at me. Well, Ultimate Rick Jones is for that.
My music experience, I haven't found many people to work with, and like
Yeah.
I I'm confident that I could be a good producer for anybody.
Yeah.
I'm confident I could
Enjoy
be a
that part.
good guitarist or write
Yep.
lyrics, but when I have to put them all together for my own work, it's or like make beats. Like I've been making beats for some people now, and
Yeah.
if I don't have to wear so many hats, it
Yeah.
because the analytical hat that I need to have as a sound recordist or producer is
Right.
so much different than the creative hat, and
It
it
is, right? And they're incompatible, right? If you put that like flinty editor hat on too soon, it'll squash the creative one,
yeah.
right? It'll tell you that all your ideas are bad. And that's, yeah, it's like it's important to write over here and edit over there. I've
Right.
found. Yeah, that's a really strong point. I hear very few people say that, but I feel it like a lot, like that editing and
Yeah, and
creating.
with these indie musician styles, like it's more prevalent, I feel like now because people are having to produce their own music, but the people
Yeah,
who don't are people who are allowing someone else produce their own music.
yeah,
There's so much more building, and Threads gives us that where we actually can connect with people who like I I've been trying to get a bunch of people to put my poetry onto songs, but I haven't
yeah.
got much influence. or like
Yeah, I know
what?
that's hard too. I'm like, I got these poems I want to turn into songs too. I'm like, but yeah, yeah, some of them are hard. I'm like, yeah, it would be nice if somebody would write it for me. But yeah,
So, how would you describe yourself like within being sensitive when you were growing up?
yeah,
And like, were there people encouraging you to be sensitive, or were there a lot of people like how you said, people were saying buck up or
yeah,
and stuff like that? And like, how did that influence your own artistic confidence?
yeah. I think yeah, I guess I had kind of a similar experience to a lot. I've always considered myself a pretty sensitive kid. I was very kind of in tune with other people, really like painfully shy, and I stuttered to boot. So, I picked on kind of early for some of that. This hair is natural, like it's not a perm. It just happens. So you could imagine if you're 4 and show up with this hair, you're going to get, picked on a little bit. So yeah, I think like a lot of sensitive kids, I grew up kind of learning that really you don't talk much about being sensitive because that's a way to get be, or you find your people and you get kind of clannish with those people who you trust, but you generally start to develop like a skin. I did anyway for the outside world. And I mentioned my brothers and such were older, and my older brothers.
Yeah.
Thank God I had them because I owe so much of my musical taste to what they were listening to when I was like way too young to listen to it. But they also, they were older brothers, so they picked on their little brother. Of course they did,
Yeah.
and they were kind of, and they were about 10 years older than me, so they had been invested and kind of brought up culturally in kind of a different culture that made them be tough. And their dad, my dad wasn't their dad. They had another dad who was different, was not, I thought my dad was a pretty good sensitive role model, like for me, but I don't think they had that. Like their dad was a different guy, different concerns. And but so I always felt a little separate from them. And I just liked the stuff that sensitive kids liked, that get sensitive kids picked on. I loved Mr. Rogers. My brothers loved to make fun of Mr. Rogers when I was a kid. Upset me to no end, but I mean, Mr. Rogers can take it. But yeah, I think I had, early on kind of a lot of those sort of like where you just, for me it was like a sense of withdrawing from the world. It's like I'm not going to go out there, I'm not going to do that. And in some ways I think that's limiting. Like there were things that I, maybe if I had been a little less, a little less prone to shut things off, that might have been good for me. Like I distinctly remember not joining the band because I was just too shy. Like I just couldn't do it. Like I just couldn't go there and do it. I'm like, man, if I could have joined the band, imagine, like I would have known about music like like a decade before I learned about it and got really excited about it. So yeah, I think, I can look back and say there are certainly things that I was sensitive about as a kid that kind of started to shut me off a little bit from the broader experience. But, I got pretty lucky in high school too. I met some like-minded folks. I, got interested in visual art and was halfway good, good enough to get some encouragement from the teachers and stuff. And yeah, my dad was very encouraging. Like he was, I think the fact that he had loved music as a young man and kind of had seen it as a career, or maybe like always like a thing that he missed, like the fact that he gave that up, or felt that he had to give it up, I guess, which I've kind of relitigated in my head as I get older, to not make it such a binary choice. But for him it was very much, I got to take care of my family and do this. But he always felt it, and he was very encouraging to me to get involved in art. I was interested in writing. He was encouraging of that. So anything I wanted to do in that regard, he was very encouraging of. So I'm really grateful for that, which I know not everybody gets, or not everybody has that sort of person in their life who allows you to do that, who makes some of that okay. And that doesn't mean it's not still hard to be sensitive, but it is, I think some of that in imposter syndrome, it's not that it's still not there, but it's a little less foundational. Like it's a
Yeah.
little wobblier because I have still the voice of my father somewhere in my head saying, you know what, buddy, you can probably do that. Like if that's what you want to do, I bet you could do that, which is, an amazing thing to have somebody say to you when you're a kid.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for that.
I appreciate your wisdom and saying that. It also makes me feel less like alone, even though, because we had some of the similar stuff happen, even though we're
Yeah.
like a generation apart.
Right.
So I'm the youngest out of um four boys and one
Yeah.
girl, and I'm the only one that is like all of my brothers and sisters are half or step brothers
Yeah.
and sisters, so I'm the only one.
Right. The only full-blooded, you don't
Yeah,
have any full-blooded
and
siblings. Yeah.
and
Me neither. Yeah. That's the same.
because of that, they all called me the golden child. Um, and yeah, my closest brother is 6 years older than me, so he had a different like. They did keep me away. They tried to shelter me, my older brothers, from
Yeah.
um, the life that
I was gonna say you
I,
grew up in a pretty rough place, right, Chris? A lot of gang activity and stuff. I know I've heard you talk about.
yeah, and
Yeah.
they were a part of that, but we were a product of circumstances. The only community you could find was within
Right.
gangs. Like there
Yeah.
was like
Right.
the only people who will accept you or protect you
Right.
were within gangs, and it like honestly, I was never part of a gang that's doing violent crimes and stuff. We were just like a group of people who would meet and you know,
Yeah.
d
Looking out for
the
each other.
yeah, and like deface property. Like I was,
Yeah. Property, teenage property crime is, pretty common.
I, and
That's for teenagers in general.
I was so bad with art and painting, so like
Yeah.
I never did any of the spray painting and stuff. But that it was just like a way that it was also a way that people were like saying, F the industry or F the establishment.
Yeah, kind of right.
Um,
There's not a whole lot of rebellion you can feel at that age that makes much of a difference. But yeah, kind of something that's sort of like, hey man,
and
back
this
at you for all you give to us, right?
what's crazy is this is all in middle school. So I hit high
Yeah,
school and I became a jock and I was able to find a new community within athletes and like all the other
yeah.
sports people. Um, I made every varsity team like
Wow.
um, but there was also this part of me that was this sensitive poet, comic book reader.
Yeah,
I love Pokemon, all these things that
right.
I could not share with the athletes and jocks.
Yeah. Huh.
And yeah, that it made me suppress all of my sensitivity for the longest time.
Yeah.
But it all kind of built back up to me, so when something happened, I would overflow with sensitivity and
Right. Yeah, kind of primed for it because you're not letting yourself feel it. Like I'm
I'd
pushing it down, and then when it comes up, it's sort of like a volcano. Yeah.
and and the other thing that I connected with your story is because I was a poet since elementary school, but my
Yeah.
art, anything that was a little artistic that I could do, like poetry, I had to not, I couldn't do it. And I never got introduced to music or theater or film or any of these other art forms because the jocks weren't allowed to do that in my school. So like
Right.
the theater kids and the band kids, they were like literally separated from us in every way possible because they knew that the jocks pick on them kids. So our school literally made it a point to make sure that they both have different lunch hours. They both
And
like
like separate them to solve the problem. Yeah.
yeah, and that's so I was always separated from any of the artistic kids and stuff. And then I never thought I could be artistic until I lost sports.
Yeah. Do you
Um,
feel like how did you feel when you were in the sports, Chris? Did you feel like you were kind of like you were sort of there only because they didn't know about the sensitive side of you, like you were hiding it, or did you really feel like it would spring back up on you? Like I'm not thinking about that, but then if I don't think about it, it's still there and it pops up on you, or were you? kind of, or did you feel like you were undercover as a jock, or did you really feel like I belong here, like this is me?
I feel like I belong there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
That's cool, but it's
I
only their perceptions that made you feel like,
the,
like your sensitivity was out of place there somehow, right? Like that didn't.
well, my sensitivity actually was the reason why I became a mentor and a captain to especially
Yeah.
the younger generation. Like the people in my class, yeah, they didn't look up to me. They knew I was they knew because they seen stuff where I would cry and all this stuff that like I was not someone who was a captain there in their eyes, even though I was a
Yeah.
captain in the coach's eyes, because what I would do is I'd take all the younger class people and like I would bring them up. I would make them feel like they belonged. I would
Yeah.
make them feel like their emotions are valuable. And
Right. Feel like a real teacher to them.
I
Yeah.
I would be a mentor, and
Yeah.
it like the amount of parents that I had come up to me about how much that I have gave their kids confidence by just
Yeah.
not treating them like the other like one of the biggest stories I could tell is there was and this was in I was like it was the eighth grade, but I was playing in like competitive leagues. There was
Yeah.
there was a kid on our team who never got past the ball,
Yeah.
and because no one wanted to pass on the ball and that
Right.
I would always make a point to pass him the ball to give him a
Yeah.
chance because that's I was like he needs a chance. And I passed him the ball this one game and he shot it and made his first point and like
That's awesome.
he was so happy about that, but his parents came up to me and was just like, you are helping my child feel confident and we appreciate you
Yeah.
for that. And like getting that emotion, like
Yeah.
it made me feel like I do have purpose within sports because
Yeah.
I look out for the people who are not being they're being overlooked and stuff. And they
Right.
could be a great athlete, but no one
Yeah.
passes them the ball or
That's
nothing.
right. If they never get the ball, how would you know if they, they could be great?
And
Yeah, no, that's amazing, man. And I think it argues like, there's this sense, or I had a sense anyway when I was a teenager, that like, yeah, that sensitivity that I was too sensitive to do that. But you're right. Like it's actually the sensitivity that kind of opens the door in something like that. You need like sensitive people who are good at that to be able to show other people, to be open to help other people be good at it, right? That's kind of thing, an amazing thing to have at that age, I guess, to sort of serve as a
because
mentor for those kids must have been quite a
I,
thrill.
I feel like it all came from the fact that I didn't have that.
Yeah,
And
right. Oh, yeah, exactly. To say, man, I wish if I'd had somebody to do this for me. Yeah, and that's a cool feeling too, though, to be able to like pay that to somebody else. Yeah. Whenever people think about, the sensitive people not being strong, I'm like, dude, that's super strong, right? Like that is like it is. It's selfless and it's giving of yourself. Yeah, it's the kind of yeah, it makes me think that, people who argue that folks who are sensitive are weak somehow. I think it's the opposite. I think they're quite strong to be able to sort of reach from this place and help other people or give of themselves in ways that are kind of selfless. So anyway, that's a
yeah.
cool story and
I mean, but
cool
between
thing.
my athlete being an athlete and losing like my basketball scholarship and then like having to integrate back into this world of the community that I was born in, the gang community and
Yeah.
stuff, like
Yeah.
I did not have any type of encouragement for me to be sensitive. And
Right.
I was actually even more looked at as my sensitivity being a weakness,
Yeah.
especially because this has to do with this relationship I was with for a
Yeah.
couple years that we'd go to these parties and these men at the parties would be like, "Why are you dating that little bitch?" And they'd point at me like, "Why are you
Oh,
dating
yeah.
that? Like, why are you dating that? Like, you could have a strong man." And then she would start questioning and then like want me to act
Yeah.
strong and be the protector or anything like that.
Yeah.
And it
Like wrapped up in the whole performance of masculinity and yeah.
yeah. And it's
Yeah.
so they made me still feel like it was a sensitivity, so I hid it.
Yeah.
I hid it.
Yeah.
And then when I found oh, I mean at my darkest point, I found art again and found music
Yeah.
and started writing, and that's when I started being sensitive to a piece of paper. And
Yeah.
then when I started songwriting, I didn't get any accreditation from, or not accreditation, any reassurance that my sensitivity was a strength until
Yeah.
like my third year back in college, where they were like, your songwriting and stuff is actually powerful. And then I was able to reshuffle my mind to say like, this part of me is my biggest strength rather than the weakness that everyone treated me as. And
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like the ugly duckling becomes the swan, right? The thing you thought was my weakness is actually my strength. And yeah, and yeah, I think that's all. And I think it's true.
yeah, like I actually couldn't love myself until I could get away from the the shame of
Yeah.
loving things that other people don't love, and that made me
Yeah.
feel different and wrong. But
Right.
when I was able to actually do that self-reflection and be like, these are things I love, and I shouldn't hate myself for loving this.
That's right.
Um, like
Yeah.
comic books, a big
Yeah.
part of that.
Oh man, I love comics. I still would. You and was it Kenny? Is that
Yeah,
the other?
Kenny.
Yeah, you guys. I'm like, oh, we the comic book guys always find each other on these social media. And so I'm like, if I want to talk about Daredevil, I'll talk to you and Kenny. Like you guys are comic book
Dare
guys. But yeah,
Daredevil gave me the strength. Actually, it was through all that whole aspect of like trying to find music, and
yeah,
it was between me and being an athlete and an artist. That whole journey, I was watching Daredevil on Netflix, and
yeah.
his courage to take what people would see as his weakness or his disability, which
Right.
also my ADD is looked as disability, but
Yeah.
by him using that as a way to help others, like
Right.
that, like Daredevil is my favorite hero because of that whole series, and just
Yeah.
it also changed me. That changed me before Dave Grohl changed me.
Yeah, it's cool though. You like that's neat. You can look back and say, "Well, these like there's like little things that adjusted my course, right? Like that tweaked you a little that way, so you were more ready when Dave Grohl came along because of Daredevil, right? Tweaked you
Yeah,
a little. Yeah, those stories. And you know I love. There's so many like the Daredevil stories, but oh, there's so many like iconic sort of comic book stories that are about like the underdog or the person who's different. I mean, you could argue that the whole X-Men plot is like people
yeah,
hate us because we're
definitely.
different for like 30 years. Well, Chris Claremont wrote it, but they were great books. And I think that people, you know, they're they're good stories to learn empathy and to learn like how to be a good citizen or like what it means to stand up for yourself or for others. Yeah, there's just like a lot of really cool stuff in comics that I think people kind of ignore or think is kid stuff. But yeah, I think it's different now because obviously the Marvel movies have made a
Yeah.
bazillion dollars. But yeah, when I'm always happy when I find my comic book people because I'm like I know they have I know we have similar references and I know yeah like the
It's
thing you said about loving yourself, that's the hardest for me though. Like I can love everybody else, it's harder here, but it's got to start here, I think, right? You got to be able to like
yeah,
yourself, and that's hard, but definitely worth it.
yeah. I mean, just piggyback on that. I find that it's hard to love myself without love in other people's eyes. So if someone
Yeah,
is showing me love through their eyes, and like this a lot has to do with relationships and the fact that I didn't feel like I deserved love for the longest time because of
yeah,
bad relationships that
right.
um
Kind of,
and then it made me feel like in order to love myself, I have to see someone love me because I could love that. I could love them loving me.
yeah,
Um, and I know this is going to be a little against the point that I made earlier, how it took me finding love in like it took me accepting myself to find love.
yeah, yeah,
But that is just a part of the love that I feel that is not like I still don't feel like the other people love me, but at
yeah,
least I could love myself in these times. but it still is hard to love myself as like confidence wise. I don't feel like I'm
Yeah,
attractive. I don't feel like I am I am stable enough for love. I don't feel like
yeah.
I'm worthy enough yet.
Yeah, I get that, man. It's hard when you like I want to feel this way about myself, but it's easier if I see it kind of reflected in other people, right? It's easier for me to believe it, and that's that, just in my head anyway. It's that same sort of imposter syndrome voice that says you're not really, you're not that good, you're not that great. You should just, yeah, you're not that lovable. You're lucky to have anything you've got, and you should be happy with it, But and it's a hard voice to untrain, and even like a little reflection from somebody else is a help,
Yeah.
right? Like it makes it a little easier to say, oh, maybe if that person sees that in me, like I could, maybe it is in me. So I get it, man, and I understand why it feels that way. I do think that it really is like what, like coming to to understand that that's external, and like the things even maybe that other people love you for, you can love yourself for all sorts of other reasons, right? You can love yourself for being a sensitive person, for being a kind person, for knowing that you like, go out of your way for other people, and that's going to be stuff that's actually, it's kind of easier for you to know about yourself than it is to see reflected from other people. So in my experience, those reflections have always made me kind of focus on maybe the wrong thing. It's like that she loves me, but she loves my eyes. I don't love. I'm like, my eyes don't do much for me. But there's some of that that's like, yeah, kind of figuring out a way to love yourself kind of for who you are is sort of a unique experience to you, right? Because nobody else is you, and nobody else kind of lives in here. And that's the hard part, right, man, is loving this whole messy thing we get to be. But
It's,
it's worth it. I think it's worth the work.
it, that is, I laugh so hard at that because that is one of the things I've been told. They're like, "Oh, I love your eyes. You have such beautiful eyes."
It's
I'm like, "That
cool.
there's
I
more
mean,
of me. How about my
is that
soul?"
right? There's a person attached to these eyes. Yeah, but you know what I mean? Like it's, oh, that's cool. And like I feel a little bump when you tell me you like my eyes. But but I know that, yeah, I know there's some like deeper way I can love myself. Yeah, to
I,
in being human.
I once got a girlfriend because of a hat I was wearing, and it was just like
How
I
long
was
did that
like,
relationship
the
last?
2 weeks.
Till you took the hat off? Man,
Yeah, well, 2 weeks. Yeah.
2 weeks, okay.
She, yeah, it was basically like this hat is the mask I am wearing to make
Right.
myself look gangster or like
Yeah.
thug, but no,
Yeah.
she liked me because of the hat.
Because, well, no, I mean, but that's meaningful too, right? That's a costume that we wear. I've done that. I did that in high school. I had the jean jacket with all the like badass patches on it because it was cover for me. Like it's a camouflage, right? I'm gonna like blend in
Yes.
with her, gonna look like the people I'm a little afraid of, right? Like I'll blend in that way.
I have noticed with your music that you have there's influences within country and blues.
Yeah.
And I know those two genres as one of the only genres like within the South or like
Yeah.
that people are actually allowed to be vulnerable when performing.
Right.
Country songs are very vulnerable. Blues songs are so like it's
Super
heart-wrenching.
vulnerable. Yeah. Right.
But from my experience with the people who listen to that music,
Yeah.
they pride themselves on this strength of being strong and Southern
Yeah.
like it's so my question is your experience with that because you do
Yeah.
create country and blues music and
Yeah.
does that make sense?
Man. Yeah, no, and that's a good question. No, I'm reeling in my mind with the magnitude of that question. Like I don't like country music. This is sort of a confession. I mean, I don't dislike country music in general. I grew up, my dad had sort of, by the time I think he had me, my father had had a dalliance with country music that he had rejected. At some point, he's like, I listen to these George Jones songs, and the more I listen to them, the more depressed I get. So I'm just going to stop listening to them. And he did, and he never went back. And so he liked some like there were a couple country artists that I really resonate with because of my dad. One of them is like Don Williams, who's a guy from the '80s, who's known for like a very lovely baritone voice, kind of the gentle giant of country music. And then some sort of like more traditional acts. Like later on, he taught me about Johnny Cash and like Merle Haggard and stuff like that. But when I was like a teenager, the sort of country music, it was like the beginning of '90s country music, and what I saw as country music kind of becoming like polished pop music. Like it was very different. It was about how you looked and how you sounded. It was
Yeah,
very, it wasn't about, it didn't feel like it was about the music or about the song anymore. So I kind of made a hard break at some point and said, well, I don't really like country music. What I like is this other thing. It's Americana or it's folk music
yeah,
or something. I mean, over the years, obviously that's become a little bit more of an artificial. I think I don't like Nashville country music. I guess like modern Nashville country music, I think is sort of produced for a specific demographic that's not me, and that's just
yeah.
not what I'm interested in. If you love it, great. Plenty of people love it. Super popular. That's awesome. If it's your thing, cool, but it's not mine. And so I always loved, like I think in high school I found this Steve Earle album, Copperhead Road. Have you ever heard that Copperhead Road song by Steve Earle? It's kind of an old song, tune from it was the late '80s. But anyway, it was a twangy kind of country-ish thing, but it felt like rock music to me. And I bought this album and I loved everything on it. And my buddies all kind of made fun of me because they said that's country music and you couldn't listen to country music. It was not cool. They were all metalheads when I was a teenager. Um, but I didn't care. I stuck with it, and I'm like that album became kind of a little bit of a turning point for me. So I guess from that point, I became interested. I really liked the instrumentation of country music, kind of like the twangy. I love the pedal steel guitar,
Yeah.
stuff like that. But I didn't like the kind of slick, polished sort of the songwriting that they used. I didn't much care for. So I gravitated more towards like folk music writing. Like John Prine was a big influence on me early. The guy named Joe Henry, who's a kind of Americana artist early in the '90s, who was a big influence on me. So it started to be around that time that folks started to record music that sounded like country music, but like wasn't made in Nashville
Yeah.
and wasn't around there. So yeah, just that's kind of a long-winded way of saying that I grew up with some country music and always really felt kind of a kinship with that sound, but just didn't care much for the songwriting and went kind of looking elsewhere for songwriting. And it just happened to be a good time. Like I found it, right? There was a lot of that kind of like twangy alternative country they were calling it at the time. But yeah, and blues music, man. Yeah, I mean, I love the Blues Brothers when I was a kid, like real sort of accessible blues music. And then later on, my dad kind of introduced me to like John Lee Hooker and Howling Wolf and like real like bluesmen, you know. And I was just kind of blown away by them. I still like John Lee Hooker's Baby Please Don't Go is like just like tears my heart out of my chest when I hear it, like so simple and plaintive. But yeah, so those songs meant a lot to me growing up. And I think when I started writing songs, like it was probably the '90s, and I was probably writing songs that sounded like a lot of '90s sort of stuff I was hearing at the time. Like when I go back and listen to some of those tunes now, I'm like, wow, it's got a lot of chords in it. It's like an REM song. It's got like, yeah, but yeah. So, does that answer your question, Chris, or did I just like talk around your question for too
No,
long?
you gave the background of of that, so I'm
Yeah.
not. You might not even be able to answer this question, but
Yeah.
you you
Yeah.
you may be around some people that um you may have seen this in as how they could find sensitivity within countries and blues listening to these
Yeah.
songs about heartbreak and love loss and like depression, like you said, like the song you
Yeah.
listened to is, or no, the song your
Yeah.
dad
That.
was listening to. Was it your dad or
Yeah.
you? Oh yeah.
Yeah. My dad introduced me to that John Lee. If you never heard John Lee Hooker plays this, he's one of those old blues guys, just like him and his acoustic guitar, and it's real thin and reedy. And he's got this great voice, and he sings these hard. They have these love songs where you just like, yeah, you just feel them. But
But how did that turn the generation that listens to country music and blues? Like, to the being the strong, because even so, this comes from my experience of when I played college basketball. I went to Lamar Junior College, which is a rodeo
Yeah.
town, and
Yeah.
it's known as one of the biggest like horse ring programs. So the
Yeah.
people that I it was the people I was around was the basketball team and then the Cowboys and Cowgirls. The
Yeah.
Cowboys and Cowgirls actually accepted me where the basketball team wasn't because
Yeah.
I was too sensitive. So the athletes didn't
Right.
accept me, but the Cowboys and Cowgirls accepted me. But then they 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 loved the masculine toxicity, but also like the
Yeah.
strong cowgirl roles were like all of them I always felt were stronger than me. Um,
Yeah.
but they'd listen to these songs that were so sensitive, but they weren't
Yeah.
allowed to be sensitive on the outside.
Right. Like they were like, how can you listen to all this music and not like have any of it like seep in, like make you more sensitive like that? You know, I think some of that, and I don't know if this is that situation, but I think sometimes like everything and especially music is used to exclude people or like that's our music. Like, you know, like that's not, we don't listen to that music. We listen to this music. And it becomes almost like it has less to do, I think, with the character of the music or the sentiment of the music than kind of like a clannish loyalty to this is our music. It's
Yeah,
not for you, right? Like a way, then it becomes like another way to exclude people. And so sometimes I feel like people who say they're fans of music can kind of hear it without ever really listening to it, if that makes sense. You know, like
yeah,
you can, like I like the way I feel when I listen to this music around my friends, but maybe I don't pay too much attention to what it says, or that's not what's important to them about it at that point in time. So you and I may listen to it and get something very different than what
yeah.
they get out of it, right? Because they're just almost like they're using it for a different purpose than we would.
I mean, rap music could be a good example of that too, just from my
You know,
experience
yeah,
with rap people. But
right.
some people listen to rap music for different reasons, and most people just listen to it because everyone else is listening to it and they want to feel like they're a part of the crowd. Everyone wants to
Right.
be like,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
the toxic negativity in a lot of rap music, not all of it. There's some
Sure.
really brilliant rap musicians. I
Plenty of
mean,
super positive.
to,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's a
to,
spectrum right for all types of music, but definitely the yeah, the sort of stereotype anyway of hip hop music
to
is that it's fairly misogynistic, right? Or at least some of it can be, as we're
and
saying.
and Tupac actually broke the mold by making a song about his mother, and it was like the
Yeah.
first time because I've seen a documentary in that like rappers didn't know that they could actually be that emotional about family members and their parents until Tupac made that
Yeah.
song about his
People would be open
mom.
to it. Yeah.
And it did change a bit of not all rap songs had to be about
Right.
gang life and
Right.
being the
It could
strong.
be like tougher. Yeah.
It could be emotional, and a lot of people did start making music like that, but they weren't looked at as, you know, the stuff that I was allowed to listen to when I was growing up with these people who were like, yeah, yeah. I mean, you could
Yeah.
listen to Tupac
Right.
because it's Tupac, and
Right. And he Tupac made it okay then for other people to do this, right? Like, well, yeah, you need somebody to kind of that people sort of look up to kind of to go first.
what would you give emotional advice to people still dealing with this who haven't gotten emotional advice?
Yeah. I mean, I think my advice now is I think my inclination was to believe the people that told me to like buck up or just deal with it. And I think in some sense that caused me to close off a little bit. You know, like I said, like I'm going to pull back from these people who are going to hurt me or are going to judge me for these things. I'm just going to do this kind of thing in secret. You know, I guess I would say that in hindsight, that was the wrong thing to do. Like, I think the right thing to do is to try to be as open with yourself as you can allow yourself to be and to like feel these things when they come in and feel them because you're going to feel them. People are going to say shitty things to you. The world's full of shitty people. I'm sorry, but they are, you know, they're going to say mean things, they're going to say cruel things. And And now I let them come in and I feel it, and it's just a feeling and it goes. And, and before I would fear it and I would hide from it. And, and like a lot of the stuff that I have now, the joy that I was talking about, like working with other people and meeting folks like you on threads and being like, none of that, I couldn't have done any of that when I was hiding like that. It was all because I was willing over time to kind of open up and feel it. So I think my advice for anybody who's kind of dealing with something hard that you might feel like maybe you're hiding from is let yourself feel it and protect yourself. Like, don't put yourself in it when you can't deal with it, but let yourself feel it and understand that it's just a feeling and that feeling's going to come and go. And I think if I would have dealt with that a little earlier, I think I would have been happier sooner, I guess. Does that make sense, Chris?
Yeah, that is some great advice. Um, yeah, I mean, even for me, I
Cool.
I
Yeah.
I need to rehear wisdom too, because sometimes my mind starts getting wisdom from other people, and
Oh,
I'm
I
like,
know. You get a lot of input. Yeah, right. You got them. Yeah. I mean, I think, yeah, but believe in yourself and be willing to feel like, what do they say? Get comfortable with feeling uncomfortable. Like, I think there's something to be said about that. I think I shied away from experiencing a lot of things because I was afraid of the way they'd make me feel. And I think that's wrongheaded in the end. I think the right thing to do is protect yourself and know yourself, but be willing to go in and feel it and know just because you feel something bad doesn't mean a bad thing's happening necessarily. It just means your body's just telling you something, right? And it can come and go. That's all
take some wise words, people, from the
right.
ultimate Rick Jones, a legend in our community.
Thank you,
Um,
brother.
Plug yourself.
Yeah, Ultimate Rick Jones. You can find me on everything's on Bandcamp and will be kind of forever. So find me there if you're Bandcamp folks on Apple Music, Ultimate Rick Jones, Spotify, YouTube. Catch me. Please join us on Threads if you're making music, man, on your own. Come and join the indie music community on Threads because it's awesome, super supportive, lots of great people there. You know, Chris and me and many others who we like to chat with there and who support us and other folks. So yeah, man, thanks for doing this too, Chris. I think this podcast is like, your show is really important. I call it a podcast. I don't know. It's not really a podcast, a video cast, a podcast, but whatever you call it, I love your show and I think it's really important. And I very much appreciate you inviting me on it.
Oh yeah, no, it's a pleasure having you on here. I call it a talk show because that's what
Yeah,
I I
that's good.
I want to do in my future is,
Yeah,
write for a talk show or anything like that. But
that's awesome.
um, is there anything coming up for you? Are you anything you're
Um,
working on
Yeah,
that's
I got a couple. I've got one kind of in the can, ready to come out that may come out after the holidays or in December. Kind of still deciding on when to release it, but and working on a couple others with collaborating with some folks on Threads on some exciting stuff. So I've got a few others in progress right now. So yeah, expect more from Ultimate Rick Jones. Just trying to decide. A buddy of mine told me never to release anything after Halloween because the rest of the year is just holidays. And I'm like, there might be something to that. But, indie music, you don't have to worry about all the rules. So I may still just release whatever I want. But yeah, more coming, man, for sure.
and keep the lookout, everybody, for the carpal tunnel Ultimate Rick
Oh,
James,
that's road. Everybody else but Rick Jones. We're gonna collaborate on something. So
and
watch
Rick
out for that.
James.
And
Yeah,
Rick
yeah.
James, Rick James might be involved too. No guarantee. See, I think he's dead.
Oh, but I could sample something.
There we go. We
So.
could do the AI. Maybe yeah, that's frowned upon, but yeah. No, we'll do. I would love to do that, Chris. Let's plan something. You and
Yeah,
I.
I'm down.
Awesome. Cool,
Well,
man. Thank you.
everyone, thank you for joining us. Definitely support Ultimate Rick Jones. He he's such a kind soul who's supported my music and has been supporting everyone else's music on Thread. So support his music. His music is great. I highly recommend listening to uh Everything Broken or Peculiar Birds. Those are my two favorites uh that that are on my playlist now. So,
Thank you, man.
but welcome to be. Thank you for joining being vulnerable, and thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks everybody for watching.
Yeah, and we'll see y'all on Friday for a special Necos for Breakfast episode.
Hey, it's Daniel. Cool. Mhm.